Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Great conversation today with Daniel Way. You know, Dan, he did that great run of Deadpool with Steve Dillon years back. Was really a very dominant Marvel writer from the early 2000s up until just about a couple years ago. Dan and John Proctor for Marvel's Epic line wrote a book called Gun Theory. We only got about halfway through it. About 2 issues only came out, and Epic had its historical problems. We get into that with Dan, but the good news is the rights reverted back to Dan and John. They were able to finish it, and now Dark Horse is putting Gun Theory out. And we talk about that today. We get into a little bit about Dan's days at Marvel, but man, he's been busy since then. I had no idea. Dan has organized a comic book convention up in northern Michigan. We talk about that back in the day. But currently, if you are into geek-related crafts, Dan has a series of conventions that are going on across the country in various cities. And he's been doing this for a while now, and it's catching on. And we talk about that as well, including the fact that Dan is now part of a comics virtual studio. A bunch of other fellow writers and artists have gotten together with Dan, and he talks about his comic collective. And finally, because of his long association with Steve Dillon and even Darwin Cook, because we lost them both this year, I wanted to get Dan's thoughts on those two great comic creators. So, tremendous conversation with Dan Way on this episode of Word Balloon. It is brought to you by InStock Trades at InStockTrades.com, where I am betting there are a lot of Dan Way trade paperbacks for you to check out. You know, Dan's had some really interesting story runs. You can get things like Dan's run on Astonishing X-Men. The Arc Monstrous, Volume 7 of the trade paperbacks, is 42% off, just $9.85. Dan did a lot of writing of Daken, Dark Wolverine, Wolverine's son, and here's some great examples of that. There is Wolverine Empire, co-written with Marjorie Liu. And this book is 42% off. You can get it in trade for $11.59. You can get Dan's complete collection of Deadpool. Dan, and actually a little bit of Annie Diggle in that. Volume 1 is 42% off, just $20.29. Same price for volumes 2 through 4. There are lots of single arcs of Dan's run on Deadpool as well, including X Marks the Spot, Volume 3, which is 42% off. $9.27. In fact, all of the Deadpool trades, for the most part, are $9.27. Some you can get as low as $8.69, like Dan's tie-ins to Secret Invasion and Dark Reign. Those, how did Deadpool react to those events? Those books are available at 42% off, just $8.69. Tip of the iceberg for Dan Way stuff at InStockTrades.com. All right, let's get our conversation going with Daniel Way. It's great to welcome him back to Word Balloon. Here we go. It's Daniel Way, and it's been a while, but I'm glad to welcome him back to Word Balloon. It's always a pleasure, Dan. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too, John.
And I am very happy that Gun Theory has found a nice publishing home. You know, for people, and you've been on before to talk about Gun Theory. It's had a storied history, and I almost like where it first came from. To sort of remind people, because it's an imprint that didn't last long, but actually, you know, there were a few really significant books that came from this imprint. So remind people where it started.
Well, it actually what you're talking about is Marvel's Epic imprint. It actually started before that. So in 2000, 2001, you know, I just started doing some stuff for Marvel, but you know, it was just, you know, a story here or there, and I was continuing on, you know, with my self-publishing stuff, which is where I started, and I had, thanks to Diana Schutz, I was talking to this artist John Proctor about, you know, working on something. I said, I've got this script that I've had, you know, at that point I had it for, you know, 5-6 years, just kind of kicking around. I think this would be cool to work. And we actually did, I think we did it as like an 80 pages. I think it was 80 pages. maybe it was only 48. I'm pretty sure there was an 8 in there. And it's kind of like a graphic novella kind of thing.
Okay.
And we printed up I think like a 10-page preview copy, like a mini comic kind of thing. We actually took it to San Diego Comic-Con. That was my first San Diego Comic-Con. And we were selling them for like $1. We sold them for $1 for like the first day or two, and then John and I were like, we hate selling things. So we wrote, free on the table, and we just dumped them all on the table. And we just went and, we were in California,
man.
We're going to go do the California thing. At some point during that show, Axel Alonso came up to me, and he's like, "What is this thing? What is this? What is this little book you have?" And I said, "Well, it's book Gun Theory. Why didn't you tell me about this?" Well, it's not a Marvel comic book. It's not what you guys do. And he's like, actually, it will be, keep this under your hat, but we're going to revive the Epic line. And we're looking for, kind of non-superhero stuff. And, I'd love to take a look at it. So that's where, that deal came from. And we were going ahead with it on our own. And then, the idea of, we had to make changes to it because they weren't going to put it out as a graphic novel or a graphic novella. They wanted to do, monthly, like a mini series,
Sure.
And the story didn't break that way. You couldn't, it didn't fit into 22-page increments. So John and I had a conversation, and it just seemed like that was a much smarter deal because, Epic was great. We retained, ownership of the property, and, so we'll be able to, theoretically get it out to a much bigger audience. So we said yes, signed the deal. We were with Axel and Bill Jemis, and back in the kind of the Wild West days of turn of the century Marvel.
Yeah.
And we got the first issue out, and then there was some. The way it was explained to me is that someone out on the West Coast had been kind of burned by, I think it was a Max project that they had some issues with. They were trying to sell it. They had a deal on the forks, and then someone saw the Max version, and so when they then later found out that they had this property on their books that they didn't own, I guess they kind of went through the roof, and that was the end of Epic. To their credit, Marvel called me up, and they're like, "We're embarrassed. We're sorry. This absolutely wasn't our intention. We're going to send you a rights reversion letter immediately," and they did. So, as bad as that situation was, it definitely could have been worse. That being said, we'd only gotten 2 issues out, and that was why the delay in the second issue is because we were all of a sudden I missed. It's been so long ago, and it's so bizarre. But so the delay for the second issue is because we were contacted by Marvel, and they said, we're going to have to change your contract, and we're like, oh boy, here we go. This is going to be terrible. The contract that they came back to us with was a better contract.
Wow.
And we were like, what? And then I swear it was really quick. I mean, like weeks later, they're like, Epic's done. And that was it.
Wow.
So it went, it was just like high point, fear, higher point, desolation. It was done. And it took forever to get back to it for a couple of reasons. One, it left a bad taste in my mouth. Every time I would look at the work, I just couldn't divorce myself from those memories.
Okay.
And 2, I was just busy. I was writing a lot of books. I started picking up a ton of work at Marvel. So it really wasn't until I was done with Marvel that I had to take stock of everything and kind of choose how, my next step, which is when then we did the Kickstarter book, or the Kickstarter campaign, which is I think the last time I was on here, that's what I was talking about. And John probably won't like the fact that I'm bringing this up, but I had told him, I said, the way to go about this is that you kind of ask for the least amount of money you can do it for, and then you just hope that you surpass that amount. And usually you do. The way Kickstarters go is that once they kind of get within earshot of that goal, then you're going to make it, and then it's just it's no longer people kind of it's more like an investment thing or a vote of confidence. They're just ordering books from you. Mm-hmm. So the dynamics change, and that's why you start picking up a lot more money at the end if you're in that zone. But it's to do a graphic novel. The art side of it, just the time is a lot. And John was like, "No, we gotta do it for this number." I said, "Okay." We gave it our best shot, but we knew pretty early on. We're like, I don't think we're gonna make it. And I've been contacted I've known Scott Alley for years, and he had contacted me about something else, and it was actually a project that I was working with at Dark Horse at the time, and I just kind of threw it out there. I was like, "You remember that book that we started at Epic? It's called Gun Theory." He's like, "Yeah, what's going on with that?" I said, "It's being published at Dark Horse," and he's like, "Yeah, let's make that happen." So then I told him we were doing a Kickstarter, and he was like, "Oh, that for whatever reason, Dark Horse doesn't get excited about people bringing their Kickstarter books to Dark Horse. I don't know why that is, but it's just the way they're structured." And so that didn't thrill the publisher. So I said, "Well, if it matters, I don't think it's going to work out." And then, so he's like, "Oh, I don't know if that's good or bad." I said, "Well, let me see if we can salvage this." So I called up John. We had a conversation, and I said, "We need to kind of kill this thing." Sure. Because at this point, if something strange happens, and then anyway. So I put out, an update to the backers, and I basically said, good news and bad news. Bad news is we're not going to make it. And, if you've got a Kickstarter and you put out that message, this just, it's done. If you don't believe in it, then no one will. But at the same time, I said, but the good news is that we've been approached by a publisher, and I didn't name him at that point. And this book will be coming out, which was another, which is another way to kill it, because they're like, well, you don't need our help anymore, so we're leaving. But that way we were able to immediately move into making a deal, because we didn't have this thing hanging out there. Because it was immediate. It was totally threw cold water on it, because the pledges just stopped. It was full stop. It's not like they slowed down. It just quit.
Okay.
And then we just started putting together the deal for Gun Theory, and because of what we had dealt with in the past, we were pretty straightforward. We were like, well, here's the deal on Gun Theory. You guys can't change anything. We're going to do whatever we want, and that's it. And it doesn't go out the door until it gets our final approval.
Okay.
And they were like, "Yeah, fine." I was like, "Oh, great. Okay, well, let's do this book." And we did.
That's cool.
Finally got it out the door.
Yeah. What is the final page total? And
I actually don't even remember. It's somewhere around 150. Maybe it's a bit more. I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay.
That was the other thing. We just kind of, when the story was done, it was done, you know?
Yeah,
and
it was a finite story, sure.
Yeah, but there was, there was a reason why I had to kind of put a lot of thought into, like what I was going to do next, because I knew I was done. I guess not just working with Marvel. I was just done, being on the assembly line of comics.
Sure.
I just done so many books that the most important thing about them was that they be done right now, and them being done right was way further down the list. I wanted them all to be right, and I would drive myself nuts over that, particularly about things that I had no power over. And I was just going into burnout. And the thing is, I love comic books, and I love creating comic books. So it was just time to go. And the only thing that would bring me back to it, one is I just had to get my head straight, which in my case meant getting sober and kicking dope, and then just kind of figuring out what I really wanted to do. And what I really wanted to do was what I started out doing. I just wanted to create new things and tell stories in new ways. And that's why, I don't know how Gun Theory is going to be received, because there's a lot of kind of experimental things in there, things that I've wanted to try for a long time. And I would, I would end up doing like a half measure of it at best in a lot of Marvel books, because those books weren't built for these kind of experiments, and it's not what they were. I don't know. They didn't belong there. But a book like Gun Theory is exactly where it belongs. So, in a lot of cases, it came down to, kind of, because I had, John's a friend of mine, so I would call him up and we would talk through scenes, and it was really reductive. This is what, I would write the script, and then this is what the character is saying, this is what is happening, and then we would figure out a nice way to kind of do that kind of unreliable narrative thing where characters saying one thing but doing a different thing.
Sure.
And at times it's evident that the character fully believes what they're saying, even though they're doing something completely, not exactly the opposite, but counter to it. And I don't know, so that it gives the reader the opportunity to point out, to call bullshit on some stuff. I don't think you get that a lot in kind of mainstream fiction, where it gives you ample room to kind of make your own assumptions and kind of fill in your own ideologies. And I mean, that's the kind of work that I like, kind of stuff that I like to read. In the case of Gun Theory, you have the main character who is, he's a murderer. And when you first meet him, he's dying. And so the story is how he got to that point. But I don't know. It doesn't end I don't think it ends how most people would think it would end. And frankly, at least I hope it doesn't, because throughout the course of the story, my hope is that readers are going to start making assumptions, and then I can kind of play counter to that, or go along with it, or vice versa. They go along with me. I don't know.
Sure. Right.
At this point, I think I'm kind of rambling.
No, but I understand what you're saying, and it's part of what got us to this point. I always liked the idea of the book. I also liked several of your other ideas that I'm sure are hopefully coming soon. Stanko Gets the Ladies. I don't know, that was something that you talked about a long time ago.
Oh yeah, that's still out there. I've talked to a couple of people about it. I've got. I did another Kickstarter campaign for a book that was successful. It was very successful, actually. We're finishing that up now.
What book was that again? I think we talked about it.
It's a Kill Crazy Nymphos Attack.
Oh, hilarious. Was that with the
Saska twins? Yeah.
Yes, the sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah, the filmmaking sisters.
I was just talking to Jen on the phone earlier today.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's we'll probably have to do a whole other interview on that because there's a lot going on there.
That'd be my pleasure. Okay, good.
But yeah, that was a ton of fun. That was. I actually, if people, I had that story idea for so long. As a matter of fact, I did this early on in my career. I did an interview that's become kind of infamous. It was an interview with, I can't even remember with whom. It was about the Ant-Man Max book that I was working on, but and it got shelved because of the content. And I mentioned that I was working on this story, and that was in like 2003, I think.
Crazy.
Something like that, yeah.
That Max line really, I felt bad because it on one hand, I thought there was so much really good content that came out of it, and it got negative responses from power brokers rather than the audience. And that's what sucks because, Garth Ennis's Fury, I know, was fun and really unapologetically crass. But to explain a side of Fury as this Cold War vet that came from a time period where it was okay to behave badly, and it was a shade of Fury that was plausible. But I seem to remember that, and I don't know if this was the one thing that you were talking about, but George Clooney or somebody wanted Fury.
Yeah,
was that the one? There you go.
Yeah,
and his production company saw it, and it's like, well, I don't want Nick Fury to be surrounded by a bunch of drunken, unconscious Asian hookers.
Right.
I mean, and again, it was a parody. It was and it was funny. I mean, and again, it's I don't know. I talked to guys like Tony Hendra who worked for National Lampoon, and it's I mean, we're in this era of safe content, and let's not piss people off. In fairness, I know Marvel too was trying to broaden its brand, and this is was the genesis of Marvel movies and wanted to appeal to a broad audience.
You have to understand that back then, 2001 or so, 2000, the company was just circling the drain.
Yep. Yep. Almost bankrupt, ready to be bankrupt.
And it was the mandate was basically just do whatever it takes to get. We need a pulse,
right?
And so it was. In all honesty, it was actually a really fun time to work there. It was chaotic, and the ground would move very quickly and very seismically under your feet, but it was exciting. You could get away with a lot, but when the restrictions kind of fall away, it's not like you just unrestricted from saying fuck. You can do all kinds of things that wouldn't normally kind of fit into the constraints of your standard kind of PG,
mainstream
PG-13 rated. Yeah,
right. Well, that was the thing, and
but nowadays, and I can tell you, just from a creator standpoint, is that the toughest thing is that you just don't want to be the subject of the daily outrage.
Well, sure.
And it's really stifling, because it's just, I don't know. I don't even frankly, as I'm talking right now, I'm just screaming at myself inwardly, stop, shut up, don't talk about it.
All right, man. No worries.
Because it's just nuts,
Yeah. No, it's a different Marvel at a very different time, and and again, unfortunately, success was happening in a mainstream way, and all of a sudden, a lot of these kind of left.
Well, that's the first kind of blush of Marvel, the first Spider-Man, the first X-Men,
right?
Publishing didn't benefit from that.
Right.
We were all sitting there and watching the box office returns come in and while we ate our ramen noodles.
I hear you, man. Yeah. No, definitely. Well, and different people in charge and stuff. It's Avi Arad, I know, was the one guy making the deals and stuff, and He's not there anymore for a very obvious reason. So, and now you see where Marvel movies are, and it is all one Marvel, and now also Marvel Television and that. So, no, it's a different company now. But yeah, it's like a lot of projects got orphaned because of that.
Yeah, I had 2 of them.
There you go. Exactly, man.
I had a Deathlock series, which I've got to me and Derek Robertson just have to get together and just kind of repurpose that one because it was a lot.
God, I hope so. I know of.
And then an Ant-Man book. That thing's had a lot of starts and stops, though.
Okay, but that's like I know. God, and I'm blanking on the name of what it became when it was at Wildstorm. But I know 2 guys who had a failed Doctor Strange pitch, and they were able to reconfigure it into its own thing, and it did finally come out, and it was very different from Doctor Strange, but it was fun and it was a great idea. I mean, when you get down to it, Deathlock, you strip it right down, and it is just a cyborg story. So hopefully, I hope you and Derek are able to repurpose that. Why not?
Well, yeah. I mean, if Derek's got time, he's got.
I understand that too.
That Derek Robertson's got he's got the mojo working currently.
Yes, indeed. No, I finally met him. I can't remember if it was this Cincinnati or the previous Cincinnati. Tony Moore.
Oh, Derek.
Yeah,
he's
good guy,
Derek's a sweetheart.
Yeah, good guy, absolutely, man. And genius artist, absolutely, man. Well, and same goes for Proctor, obviously, too. I mean, and I'm glad you guys were able to finish. When does it come out?
I think it's either like the second 14th? Or third week of December.
Okay, so probably like the 14th or the 21st. Excellent, man. You're going in a lot of directions right now. Well, tell me about some other stuff you got going on.
Well, apart from making comic books, so I have this other thing that's kind of related to comics because it's geeky.
Yeah, geek related, definitely geek adjacent.
So I've been to a lot of comic book conventions around the world at this point, and especially nowadays in the last few 6, 7, 8 years. I buy 2 kinds of things at comic book conventions. One is really small press books,
cool.
The like zines and stuff. I love them.
Yeah,
and
great
the other thing is I love these handmade crafty things that people will make, and they take some aspect of geek culture, and it's usually like the thing that they geek on, right? And then they marry that to whatever kind of crafting skill they have, and out comes these super cool little be they knickknacks or clothing or furniture. I mean, just all kinds of stuff, right?
Sure.
And my fiance Kim, she pretty much the same way because of course she's kind of a amateur crafter on her own. I like doing like woodwork and some welding here and there just because I'll have an idea of like, man, I really wish I really want this, and then that thing doesn't exist. So I'm like, well, I'll make it.
That's great, man. That's great to have.
Sometimes it's pretty great.
Wow.
Sometimes sometimes it's not so great. Well, the problem is like if every time you do this, if you only make one, then I'm actually, as I'm doing this interview, I'm sitting in my daughter's room and I made her a crib, and it's kind of a marriage between kind of Japanese or like more like a Chinese pagoda kind of swooping bow thing, but also married to kind of a shaker style, American, craftsmanship. And people come over, they love it. I've actually had people ask me to make them one, and I promptly refused. But as I stare at it, I can point at 6 things right now that if I were to make it again, not only would the end result be better, I could do it faster. So if everything you make is a one-off, and this is the story of my life, I do this, is that you're always going to look back and say, oh, I could have done this, or I could have done that. That's the problem when you're dealing with all these variables. But anyway, so I had this I got dragged to a craft fair, and I did not have a good time. And we were talking about it, and I said, you know what I would enjoy is if there was a craft fair that was just all of that handmade geeky stuff from like Artist Alley at a convention.
Sure, like the steampunk stuff and whatever.
It runs the gamut. Yeah, everything from Doctor Who to steampunk to cosplay to prop making to just everything, anime, that kind of stuff. Because it's not just the whatever the kind of the focus of the fandom is. It's also the craft work of it. And we were in the car talking about this, and then so Kimmy's on her phone, and she's like, I don't think that exists. At least it doesn't exist on Google. And I was like, and I had back in like 2009, I co-created a comic book convention up in Traverse City, Michigan, and co-owned it with a comic book store owner. And I just recently sold it, and so anyway, I said, well, I have experience, running a convention and doing all this stuff, and this is kind of similar. So, how about if I just make a craft fair?
Why not?
I would go, and the everyone we told about it, they would get so excited that I said, well, all right, I need to bring in some more people to handle all the stuff that they either don't know how to do, social media, marketing, that kind of stuff. Sure. And also, ask Kimmy to get involved because she's Kimmy she has better taste than I do. And, she knows what, if she looks at something and says, yeah, people would buy that, people are usually going to buy that. And so she's like, because I wanted to make it a curated market. I didn't want it to just be a pay-to-play kind of thing, because that would just be, I don't know, too flea market. And so we ended up setting up 16 of these things, like all over the continent, even in Hawaii. And they're all just taking off. It's become like a big thing. Geek Craft Expo is what it's called. I have to fly out for our first Seattle show in Thursday morning. So
okay,
day after tomorrow. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, good deal. And you got other shows lined up for 2017?
Oh yeah. We've got. As far as what's been announced, we've got one coming up in Raleigh, Durham, Madison, Wisconsin. We did a show in Portland, Oregon, in June. We're going to go back and do that again. Pretty much all these shows are annual events. And then we're actually, I don't know, maybe February or March, we're going to announce new shows.
Terrific.
Because all of them are kind of in various stages of development. Because it takes a while, because I'm picky about, kind of where they're going to be. And I don't want to just set up shop in some convention center, because I don't particularly like convention centers that much. I'd rather find like really sterile and, not really conducive to hanging out. Most conventions I'm there, I love meeting and talking with fans, but apart from that, if I'm not doing that, I'm running for the door. I'd rather just stand outside. That's better.
Most of the time when I see you at a convention, it is outside, and it's because you're having a cigarette break, and also, you're like, oh, can't. And I know you've said that before. I can't wait to get outside and everything, and back to the real world. It is. It's kind of this incubator of, it's just that sterile kind of thing. It's tough because on the one hand, you need a big space for the bigger conventions, so there are only so many options, and then it takes time. You can find them like these great old ballrooms and VFW halls, sure,
and
where they have some character.
Old theaters.
Those are smaller. Those are smaller venues, though, right?
Well, sometimes what they'll do is, it used to be this, and then they'll break out a wall here or there, repurpose it, and sometimes we have to get kind of inventive, and be like, well, This one's going to be 2 or 3 floors, but that's all. It ends up being just a much cooler event,
Sure.
and people end up hanging out like all day long. And it's just, I don't know. It seems, like I said, I have a good time, and a lot of the usual suspects show up. Cosplayers show up at the events, and that's great because, like,
oh, sure.
I mean, to us that's like totally normal.
Well, and it fits the theme of what you're trying to do too.
Yeah,
I mean, and clearly too, that's your audience. That's who you're.
I'll tell you what's great is the way we market this is we spend a lot of time. For the most part, we put our effort into kind of preaching to the non-converted. We get the word out through comic shops and various comic conventions and stuff. But the fact of the matter is, when these comic book movies open, the comic book shop sends all of their people to the theater, but the theater doesn't send all their people to the comic book shop.
Right.
So this stuff is much bigger. It's in a bigger market, and all of those people, those millions and millions of people, they think that geek culture is just something that they buy at the mall. It's like, and they think, oh, I'm going to buy this, and that's so cool and quirky. And, to us, you're like, what? No. So when we can kind of open the door for them and say, if you like that stuff, that's cool. That's step one. Now, would you like to see the good stuff now?
Sure.
And we get them in the door, and it's just all walks of life. It's people who, we do all these shows, but they all function as it kind of they complement. They're part of that local geeky, crafty scene.
Yes. I was going to ask about that.
Everyone is. Yeah, we don't. Like the Seattle show has people from the Seattle area.
Sure.
So when you buy something at these shows, you're buying it from someone local. You're spending your money locally,
which is awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Midwest in a town that got decimated by everything.
Yeah, well, auto industry leaving and things like that. No, the Rust Belt is known. Absolutely.
Yeah. Where I grew up, the only thing left is a off ramp and a Walmart. Some fast food joints.
No, I understand, man. That's the Midwest in a nutshell. I'm lucky to be in Chicago, where as changes have happened, it's a big enough city that it's transitioned to different things. But I mean, Chicago still struggles as well. And there's remnants of hog butcher to the world, as we were known. The stockyards, the gates to the stockyards are still there, and stuff like that. And to the north of us, Michigan, Wisconsin, have remnants of the auto industry that have gone, and a lot of mid-sized and smaller cities and stuff have had to regroup.
Well, that's why I set up that convention up in northern Michigan, because that's where I grew up.
Sure.
And
that was Cherry City Con or
Cherry Capital Comic Con.
Cherry Capital. Thank you. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, man. I didn't know you. We talked about this off the air. I didn't know you were a co-owner. I'm like, oh man.
Well, I kind of stayed under the radar, for the most part. When we would bring in guests, I think maybe some of our guests were just like, "Why is Daniel Way helping me carry my bags and shit?" But it was just important to me. One, I wanted to bring something back, because there was nothing for me as a fan growing up. I had to go somewhere for it, and like all the fans up there, if they wanted to go to a convention, they could, they had to drive down to Detroit or Chicago, but I can say that, we started Cherry Capital Comic Con in 2009, and now there's conventions all over, not just northern Michigan, but Michigan. I mean, we spawned, 15 other conventions.
Yeah.
And it's not just in Michigan, it's all over the country. A lot of our past guests, because I've always been really transparent with this stuff. I tell them, because when people would ask, people who realized that it was my show, they would ask me about things. I'd be like, I'd tell them exactly how I did it.
Sure.
And then a pretty high percentage of those former guests went out and started their own shows.
Wow.
And they're great, and they're all like, smaller regional shows, which, any creator will tell you, that doing an appearance at those shows really moves the needle, because you're at the really big shows, you can't really.
You're a blip.
Yeah,
man.
But you show up in the ass end of like West Virginia, and they're just so happy that you came to them.
Absolutely.
Yes. and you get to meet people, and especially as a writer, that's really what it's all about, because you're not there doing commissions or sketches,
right.
selling a hell of a lot. So you just meet someone,
sure.
And just have that kind of back and forth, and then hopefully, next time they see your name on something, like, oh yeah, I met that guy. He's not a total asshole. I'll give this book a shot.
Again, Tony Moore's Cincy show, which really is Covington, North Kentucky. No, that's exactly what that show is. It's a great, mellow, it's a small con, but because Tony knows a lot of people like you do and stuff, he gets great creators, and it's a great kind of chill end of summer convention that's a nice, pleasant hang, and the locals love it, and I know even beyond the locals and stuff, you get that tri-state area traffic, and they're very appreciative. I told the convention, I'm like, bring Marty Pasco out, the old Superman writer from DC.
Yeah.
He had a blast, and really, like, I know they were all like, it was great. They're like, oh, it's really, great to meet you, and older fans and younger fans, and it was. I know he had a great time, and they loved it too. So I was happy to, in a small way, to go, yeah, bring Marty. Marty will love this. So no, I hear you.
One of our Tony was a guest on my show.
There you go, and probably was inspired by that. There you go, because he's only done like 3 or 4 of the Cincy.
Yeah.
So that doesn't surprise me, man. Very cool. That's great.
But yeah, the other point I wanted to make about the people at Geek Craft Expo is that we get so many people that come in the door because what brought them in the door was they heard craft fair, or they heard local artisans, and that's what brought them in. And this is their first exposure, to geek culture, and this maybe the coolest thing about us as a group is how inclusive we are.
Sure.
Maybe it's because so many of us didn't get picked for the basketball team,
No, but
no, you could be on my team, man. Come on in. And I've countless times I see them come in and they're just like, and I'm like, let me show you around,
Well, and the socially awkward people, and even the cool set that stumbled in, and they don't know where to start. And you're right about that. I think that's one of the great things about geek culture. Everyone is welcome.
Yeah, and I figure I'm just doing my part. I'm completely at ease hanging out with a bunch of nerds. I have the best conversations. These are my people, right?
Yeah.
So, the more I can make the world like that, the better.
No, I agree.
Plus, a lot of these crafters, we give them, we have, now that this is giving them, it really is, if you're, you're a geeky crafter, we've kind of focused the market for you and given you a venue, and we get people. It's super cool when one of our past exhibitors will contact us and they'll be like, "Hey, I just wanted you to know, quit my day job. I'm jumping in," and as someone, I did that. When I finally quit my job working in a kitchen, and it was scary, but it was the best thing I ever did.
Absolutely.
One of the best things I ever did.
No, I agree, and that's awesome.
Well, and we're super stoked when that happens.
So it's geekexpo.com, or what's the
geekcraftexpo.com?
Geekcraftexpo.com. Okay, that's the URL, and that's where to go to find the shows that might be coming near you. And hell, even maybe somebody entrepreneurial might approach you for a new location as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, we get this thing's really kind of snowballed. This past week, I've taken so many calls from, believe it or not, like corporations, and I'm not talking about small ones, interested in sponsorships, and it's just like, okay, how do I deal with this?
Yeah, well, because on the one
I love how independent this whole thing is,
right?
And so it's kind of like, how much are these dollars going to cost me? So
right.
It's something that it's still kind of being discussed.
Well, that's a good problem to have. And
every once in a while, something will be easy. Like we had someone approach us for the Seattle show. They said they approached us that we're a bottled water company. We're in Bothell, Washington, which is just right down the road from Seattle.
Okay.
We'd like to be your bottled water sponsor. And I mean, conventions run on bottled water.
Absolutely.
So I was like, done.
Sure.
You're in that, and I'm welcome to Geekdom. We're happy to have you. We
terrific.
Are thirsty.
Very good.
And I mean, it's nice that it's worked out. It's cool that I don't know. Everyone seems to be having a good time, and I just obviously it's not something I could do by myself. So I was able to, I've started several companies at this point, and what I've found really works out, at least for me, and just kind of set it up as an employee-owned thing, or make everyone partners.
Excellent.
And then everyone just, does the best because, they got some skin in the game.
Absolutely.
And it works,
That's
and then
amazing.
And that way we can all go on, I can say, all right, we did a good job. Let's go to Fiji.
Man, that's a good post-convention kind of destination. It's all chill in Fiji for a weekend. Very nice. No, dude, honestly, I think that's great. And in the face of, I think, at the top level, and comic fans are well aware, likely, of some of the things that are going on at the top convention level, Wizard and all of its financial shenanigans, for a better, to put it mildly. And also a little bit of greed, I think, at some of the bigger conventions, and that's the thing. And I think this is the solution.
This is. I think. I tend to have really. I think I have good ideas for businesses. I also know that I have this thing where I'll set up a company. And it'll do well and it'll be profitable, but it's somehow capped. So with Geekcraft Expo, it's a free show, and I said it's always going to be free.
Wow!
So that's the way it's got to be.
That's terrific.
And it's like written in stone.
Good for you,
so there's
man.
no going back now. So I mean, they make enough to support themselves, and and it's it turns a profit. It's not a huge profit, but it's fun, and I feel good about it.
I hear you.
And that's really the coolest thing about kind of where I am now, is that I feel good about the things that I do, and I don't even feel the need to even explain them.
I hear you.
Which is probably doesn't make much sense just to say that during an interview about myself.
Well, I think you made enough of sense that I think people are going to go to Geekcraft Expo and .com and see where you're going to be, and that's terrific.
Well, it's fun, and it actually is a fairly cool website to look through, because
are people selling through at the website as well?
No, we don't get involved in their commerce.
Okay.
But what we do is we interview them, and so you kind of get a chance to meet the geek behind the craft.
Terrific.
Because their stories are super cool.
Sure.
How they kind of ended up doing this, and kind of hearing about why.
Right. Well, we're all.
How did you end up doing this? Because it's so unique, and it's usually of some variation of, well, I just thought it would be really cool if this thing would be really cool, and then either it didn't exist, or it had existed in a form that was not cool to them. So they decided to change it. It's basically the same story as me,
Making the Cradle.
Coming up with the show.
Well, the show and your kid's cradle. No, I want that. It doesn't exist. Fine, I'll make it.
And that's. I mean, probably me, and probably every other comic creator, be they a writer or artist or whatever. We all have this kind of compulsion to make things,
that's how
to create something.
That's how my podcast was created, man. I mean, I'm like, I knew there were a couple other comic book related podcasts out there, and I'm like, well, that's okay, but if I were to do it, I'd do it this way. And it's like, well, what's keeping me from doing it? And 11 years later, this is what I'm doing. So
yeah,
No,
that some of us don't have that gene that allows you to just sit back and complain about it.
Or do something about the complaint, really. Solve the problem as opposed to just saying, God, it's a shame this doesn't exist. And then we take that extra step, and it's like, well, why don't I do it and see what let's see what happens. And no, I get it. That's awesome. I want to talk about other things though, so I don't want to.
Sure.
I mean, we could have a 4-hour Bendis kind of tape. We don't watch it. You've got a comics collective that you've put together with some other creators.
Yeah. This is, I guess it maybe about a year ago. I was at a convention, and I was just sitting there talking with a bunch of other comic book creators, and I enjoy doing that at any show. It's like my favorite part because you get to talk shop with people who understand what the hell you're talking about. It's not the same as if you're talking to like a fan of particularly of your work. It's not the same thing, whereas if you're talking with someone, I don't know, it'd be the same as, you're a pipe fitter, and you sit around with a bunch, you talk and you can use terms that only they'll understand, because that's how you quantify it. That's how, those are the terms that you think in. And I just enjoyed it so much. And then just kind of not just talking about the craft itself, but, talking about experiences and things that went well and things that didn't go well, and working with this company versus that company, or setting up a deal with this other company, all the stuff that kind of lands on our plate. And even if you, like me, and you have an agent, it behooves you to be as informed as possible, because if your only point of information is your agent, you might be in trouble, so I just kind of transparency, open flow of information. And it can be kind of hard to come by, for a lot of reasons. And it's probably not just in this business, but anytime you have kind of proprietary content issues or, exclusive, particularly companies, are going to not be so crazy about people talking out of school, So I was thinking to myself, I would love to have kind of a group of other creators that I could just, bounce things off of, or kind of pool resources with. Mm-hmm. And because, I've always been kind of jealous of I would meet, comic book creators that are kind of, they'll either live in an area where there's a bunch of comic book creators, and they'll get together regularly. I've always lived out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And I've never really had, like my comic book crew, and I said, well, let's maybe try to do that. So I started reaching out to other creators who I knew and whose work I really respected, and the idea kind of coalesced that we would form like a collective, where we just kind of, like I said, pool resources and kind of, help each other out, like in all aspects of this stuff. So currently it's called Comics Channel. It's me, Jen and Sylvia Saska, who are mainly, filmmakers and writers. They've been doing quite a bit of work for Marvel lately.
I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Oh yeah,
on the film side.
Well, they've got some comic book work out there, but okay, they've got more work in the pipeline.
Got it.
James Asmus. who's
great.
James Great, because it's a funny story. So after a few years ago, when I finally decided that I was either going to finally do all these creator-owned story ideas, or I was going to continue writing for Marvel, because at that point it was painfully obvious that I could never do both. And I had to kind of make the jump and not renew my contract and stuff. I was panicking a little bit, so I was like, well, I want to, I'll just pick up some piecemeal work here and there, just because I'd been used to that really fast cycle of cranking out books at Marvel.
Sure.
If you're not on the shelf, then you don't exist.
Right.
I've since found out that's absolutely not the case.
Well, that's good.
You can take your time, and then you put it out, and the audience is still there. So I'd actually reached out to a former editor of mine who was at Valiant at that point, and I said, I think I think I could really knock out of the park is Quantum and Woody. I'd really have a good time with that. And he says, yeah, we already got that set up with someone. And I was like, well, if it doesn't work out, you got my number. And then I went to a convention. I met James. And in a conversation, he happened to mention I'm doing Quantum and Woody. And I was like, you son of a bitch. But then I started, once I'd met him, I hadn't really read a lot of his work before. Actually, as it turned out, I realized I had read one of his books previously. It was like Brahm and someone like Go to Hell, or The End Times. Anyway, it was an Image book, and I thought it was really funny.
Cool.
And so I started reading it, and I was like, man, this guy's hilarious. He's killing it on that book. I was like, all right, now I'm glad it worked out, because I wouldn't want to follow him, But the other cool thing about James is that he's worked in a lot of different, mediums. He's done stage plays and written for television and produced and stuff. I mean, he's done stuff for the History Channel, and so it's something that it's another aspect of scripted entertainment, and so talking to him, it comes by my knowledge base, and of course with Jen and Sylvie, they're on film, and of course they have their Elevator TV show on Game Show Network right now, and then who else? We've got Victor Gischler, and I've known Victor for a while. Yeah, he's funny, and he's also he's got that mean streak in him, Pistol Poets and stuff, where he's got that kind of dirty South thing going on, and I don't know. I just think Victor's huge. He's a very talented guy, and he's super nice. Then a guy named Cliff Baumgartner, and he's kind of a noob on the scene, but he kind of reminds me of me. Is that his first? I wrote one comic book. It's called Violet Lifestyle, and I won a Xeric grant for that. And then, a matter of weeks after that came out, Axel Alonso from Marvel called me and said, you want to write Spider-Man? Cliff's first writing gig was working on one of the Miller World annuals. So he's like, I'm going to give this a shot, and then he submitted it and he won. It had it was like a cattle call. I mean, I would hate. I remember when Mark put that stuff up. Yeah. Man, I got to go against everybody. And then, but he's a filmmaker. He's mostly documentarian, and he just did this. He did a documentary on a local comic book convention. I thought that was really good. And he's young and just on fire. You know what I mean? And so he's another guy that's got
cool.
a skill set. It's like I'm assembling the A team, and a lot of us have, if you want to do a Kickstarter, then having a great video is important, and so it's just well, we can call it Cliff.
Absolutely.
He's pretty handy with a camera and an editing bay. Then me, I don't know. I think that might be all of us. Me, Vic, Jen and Sylvie, James. Yeah. At this point, there's the five of us, but I've spoken to a couple other creators about it, and it's not like we're like, I guess you could call us a virtual studio, but we just kind of work together. Not just we work together on projects, help each other out. Because especially with creator-owned books, so as writers, we're like, hey, I got this great idea, and then you find an artist whose stuff you like, and you reach out to them, and you're like, and you find out that they just signed on to do something with another creator, or so it's so let's say I'm working with an artist, and someone else in the group is like, that artist stuff is fantastic. When are you guys wrapping that up? I can tell them, and then you can kind of have some when they're available, and then so not only can we keep an artist working and keeping the lights on, that we're not working against each other, we're not scrapping over resources. The other thing is, like, and this happens a lot where especially, and again with creator-owned books, is that a lot of times your creator-owned book comes out, it's not like it's you versus Marvel and DC. It's usually you versus all the other creator-owned books, because that's kind of how I guess probably most comic book stores kind of do their budgeting. They're like, well, I spend this much Marvel, this much DC,
right, and that's what's left. What's left is
and then
Image,
this is how we divvy it up.
Yep. And
so
also,
you're slugging it out with your other creators.
Right. Well, that's the individual customer as well. They're going to buy their regular Marvel and DC titles, and then what's left is then I'll try and experiment with a Boom book or a Valiant book or an Image book, obviously. Yeah.
So we can kind of, at least among the five of us, at least we know that we're not stepping on each other's toes. And that's something.
Sure.
And I mean, hell, sometimes it's just as basic as I'm going to be at C2E2. Anybody else? We can like gang up on a booth or something.
Right. Like the Bernard Chang and Joe
the Boulevard guys.
Boulevard,
yeah,
exactly. That's what I was going to say. I thought it was Boulevard. No, I think that's, you guys pool your resources as far as conventions go, and also with individual projects. I think that's really smart. I think that's great.
And then
you got good people
with the and with the website is kind of like it's like an aggregate news site of what we're doing.
Sure.
So you go to one place and you find out about us, and obviously we're hoping for cross promotion amongst our separate fan bases.
Certainly.
If you like Gun Theory, then I can point. You should probably be checking out this stuff by Victor.
Absolutely.
Or Vengeance by James or by Jen and Sylvie.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that.
No, it makes sense, man.
And this is the other thing, and this kind of loops us back to Gun Theory. Since we have this kind of dedicated real estate on the internet, for content that we own, we can put up these massive previews. Like I put up, there's the first 34 pages of Gun Theory are on there right now. That's a pretty good
sample.
Try it before you buy it kind of situation, right?
Absolutely.
Frankly, if I can't snag you in 34 pages, then all right. Fair enough.
What's the URL?
You don't like it.
What's the URL again for the collective?
It's easy. Comics, COMIX channel.com.
Comicschannel.com.
When you go to that, like the first thing that comes up is whatever the current preview is.
Okay.
Gun Theory will be up there for a while, and then someone else will put their stuff on there. Eventually, there'll be a way to navigate different things, but we haven't even really done a formal announcement yet, because I don't know, that really wasn't the point. But it's just we're just kind of rolling it out quietly, seeing how it all works.
With all of your mutual audiences, probably directing everyone there, and that's great.
Yeah, because frankly, what we'd have to do with all of us being, otherwise employed and quite busy is, we'd have to bring in someone to do, you bring in a marketing person,
right.
I don't know. Sometimes it works out well. Sometimes even I don't want to read those, press releases.
Right. Well, and all of you doing it this way, it's more organic, and I mean that's the thing. So I do think that you're likely to get a more active, interested group of people because then you become part of Asmus's group, and you know, and so that's great. No, that's true. I mean, I've seen that work. There was an Image Central message board for years in the early 2000s. I would go there as just a reader, and that's where Clay Moore was there, and Kirkman was there, and I'm blanking. Also, Johns and Rucka, and I forget, and Gail Simone. I think we're all on one collective message board for a long time, and certainly the Bendis board became like that. I mean, so no, that doesn't surprise me, and I think that's I think that's the best way because I think it comes off more genuine than hey, it's my daily blurb from the marketing guy that
yeah.
I wish they were bigger than they pretended.
That's why I'm really that's why I love the idea of being able to just put the work out there. Sure. Because I mean I've written so many preview solicitations. I don't think a lot of people realize that, for the longest time I was on the writer to write those things.
Wow. But
you could only basically say one thing, this is the one you have to buy it. Don't miss this, blah, blah. And now they're just like bullet points, but they all say the same thing.
Well, and again, that's another reason why I wanted to do Word Balloon was to give our writers and artists a chance to talk a little bit more and really understand the book or the idea, and let the listener and reader know what the product really is, as opposed to that little thumbnail paragraph in previews. No, I get it.
Right.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Hey.
And at this point, I also because people have asked me, aren't you, you put all that stuff up online, aren't you worried about them stealing it? It's like they're gonna if. Thieves are going to steal. It's going to get stolen anyway. I've got advanced copies of the book sitting down in my front hall right now. It's as soon as the first one goes out in the world, it's
right. It's going to be BitTorrented and exactly.
Yeah,
I know.
I mean,
I know what you mean.
And I've no one no one understands. I mean, I've had. If I want to either feel, I don't know, when I was doing a bunch of stuff at Marvel, I would sometimes go and look at the torrent sites, and I would know at least based on the sales figures because from the paperwork that I had, so I knew like how many books would at least go out into the direct market in the U.S. And this copy of this issue of Deadpool, it 80,000 copies, and you look on the torrent site, 8 million times.
Sure. Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is, it's going to be taken anyway. So why not use it? Why not just take advantage of the fact that I give this much away for free, and then but you have to buy the rest at least for a while until someone scans all those pages in.
No, I get it,
but I don't know. I think it might be. My theory is that it's actually. I don't think it's two wholly separate audiences, but I don't think the crossover is total. I don't even particularly like to read comics on the screen unless they're web comics, because somehow that just works for me. I like them on paper. I like the tactile whole fetishistic thing about it. But I've met people that have only ever read comics online, and they've never paid for them. And they've been reading comics for 10, 12, 15 years.
Understood.
I think we just the market wasn't there for them when it should have been, so they did their own thing, and now there's no putting the genie back in the bottle.
I understand, and well, again, the good news is I think you're finding. I think there. I agree. Maybe it is a little exclusive. All I know is your name is out there more, and I think ultimately it will help you build your readership. So I think a lot of today's torrenters are also people who can't afford things right now, and eventually
could be. And I understand that. And it's a bit of an expensive habit.
Yeah.
I used to have a studio space actually inside a comic book store, right? So I would Wednesdays I would wander out on the floor and I would see same people over and over again, and they'd have their they'd walk around and then get a stack of books, and of course when they go to pay, then they would say, "Oh, I'm box number da 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 da." Now comes this other pile, and every little every comic in that stack, you multiply that by $3-4.
Sure.
Like, geez, man, it's like every week, huh? That's a mortgage payment,
Yeah, I hear you, man. No, but believe me, every time they raise the book price, I'm like, really?
Yeah, especially when you're like, I read, I'm probably on the very much the light end, but I probably read 12 monthly books, and sometimes they ship twice a month, So every time, but like I said, I'm a recreational user, right? So a lot of people, they're reading 30, 40 books a week. So yeah, when your price goes up $1, that's $120 to $160 a month increase.
True.
So I definitely sympathize.
Yeesh. Well, listen, while we're talking about, and we mentioned Deadpool, I had two questions for you to close out on.
Yeah.
Because one, what'd you think of the movie?
I loved it. I was pretty lucky. Tim Miller, the director, had contacted me years ago, and he had sent me the script, and he sent me some footage that he had shot. It was all CGI, and he's like, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, and I was like, okay, here we go, and went through the script, and we'd been emailing each other back and forth for a couple of years, and at that point, Tim was just at war with Fox, and it was, and not that he ever asked, but I was like, well, you can probably get away with it if you just kind of change this. No. And see, Tim is like a total sweetheart with like this like rebar wrapped around his spine. Like I think he can just afford to be so gracious. I don't know. His will does not bend. And he, to his credit, that's why that movie is the way it is. I think, or at least it's a big part of it, because over the years that he slugged it out with the studio, at any given time, if he had just said, all right, fine, it would have been all right, green light, make a movie. It's not like they're not in the business of putting movies in theaters. But he held out, and took the hard road, and then fortunately things shifted around, and I think at the end he told me he just had to adjust the budget, and then he was off to the races.
That's cool.
And he invited me out to the set, and we got to kind of see everything.
Oh, cool.
And walking around this aluminum recycling place outside of Vancouver, and he's pointing up at the sky, and he's like, and there's nothing there, and he's like, well, that's going to be, it's going to be like a helicarrier, but it can't actually be a helicarrier. That's going to be up there, and it's going to be tilted, and da 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 da. And I'm like, and I'm looking at this, and he's got these huge like crane things. They're all stuck up in the air, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, I don't see any of that, Tim. But you obviously do. And I mean, because he would shoot something and then stop, and then movie set, everybody stand around, and the other thing, and then I would watch someone get thrown into the dirt and thrown through a door, and it all looks so small, when they're filming it, and then you see it on the screen, and holy cow, It just looks epic in scope.
No, I do. That reminds me when the first Avengers movie was in production, and somebody with a cell phone camera caught pictures of Cap and Thor fighting, and it looked like two cosplay people fighting. It didn't look like Chris Evans and Hemsworth at full tilt and with all the angles and all the big budget and the movie.
It looks like that Masters of the Universe movie from the 80s. They're just walking down the street and you're like, dude, you look ridiculous.
Yes, exactly.
Or and I've you see like a guy dressed up as Wolverine out on the show floor and you're like, man, that's a good costume. The dynamic of that whole thing changes when you're just randomly in the elevator with that dude, and you're like heading up to like the 34th floor and you're like, all right, there's a dude here in a skin tight suit.
Well, yeah, but like you said, give it the proper camera angles, throw some CGI behind it, and a good music score, and it's completely different. And again,
huge.
And it's not that outsider bystander snapshot that the guy got, but the angles that the filmmakers and crew intended. No, I get it, and really, we're going to see. It's going to be very interesting. I don't know if Miller's going to come back or if the door is firmly shut as far as him doing the second movie.
No, I think it's pretty shut.
I think so too, actually. Yeah, and I big mistake. But yeah, I mean, no, the guy.
I don't know. Tim's
not on his part, on Fox's part. I'm saying on Fox's part.
I don't want to discount Ryan Reynolds' contribution, because and he's still attached, and it was, I feel, at the heart of it, it was those two guys. So I don't think I don't think that it's doomed. But I don't know. I would just hope that they kind of stick with the formula. Winning formula. Yeah.
Although also if it's too similar, that's a problem too.
It is.
So it'll be interesting.
Well, I mean, when you look at the first Deadpool film, it's not like it covers a hell of a lot of ground. You have an origin story, an interesting origin story, but it's broken up into small parts and shot through with a pretty direct line story. I'm gonna chase down this guy. It's gonna lead me to this guy, and it's very revenge Chopsaki style story. So they could. My hope is that they just kind of blow open the scope of the story for the second one. And the characterization and everything they've already got dialed in,
right? And
kind of the how to frame it. My hope would be for a more kind of expansive story.
Well, but because that sounds like that's why Miller left, was because he wanted a more expansive story, and maybe. And I'm thinking more also, obviously, from a budget standpoint. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, maybe Tim will tell me. He's kind of busy. He's kind of busy right now. He just emailed me. I don't know, about a month ago. But it was great. And what was funny is that when we flew in to Vancouver to visit the set, the day I got there was the day they were shooting all that stuff on the overpass. The big shootout scene. Uh-huh. And so I jump into the cab, and the cab driver is livid because traffic on the overpass is locked up. So, and it's, it wasn't a cab, it was an Uber, it was like the price is locked in. And he had like go around and take me through this neighborhood and that one, and he's like some fucking movie, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm just looking over at Kimmy. Don't say anything.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's very.
Yeah.
No, that's cool, man.
So yeah, you said you had a couple of questions. Was that the only one?
Well, the only other one I wanted to wrap up with, and I don't mean to sound like a downer, but I noticed that you're probably the first collaborator with Steve Dillon that I've had a chance to talk to since his passing.
Yeah.
And any thoughts on Steve?
I miss him. I miss him terribly. Yeah. I don't know this for certain, but I think I think the only person that worked with him more than me, at least in the past 20 years or so, was Garth.
Sure.
Steve and I did, I don't know, 50 issues of various books together.
That's kind of why I want to hear what you think. Yeah, man.
So, I mean, when I first met Steve, we had already been kind of married. We got put on a book together, and that was a huge thing for me. Steve was an artistic hero to me. I was a huge fan of Steve's work, from Hellblazer to Preacher, and then, just he was like, to me, he was my favorite artist to work with. He was a writer's artist in general, but he could just pull off a lot of people in this media can do, just the nuance of it. And he, even though he was only like 12 years older than me, like I probably said 100 times, I'd ask him to adopt me, and he's like, well, I'm only this much older than you. And I was like, yeah, but you're cool. I mean, you probably could have banged my mom. But I don't want to say too much here, but I knew Steve was sick. But I also knew that after Steve, a long time dealing with a lot of unhappiness and a lot of frustration, and then this past 2 years or so, particularly with the Preacher deal, 2-3 years, the Preacher deal finally kind of arriving at something, and not only coming out, that I think that really reinvigorated him, and because all of a sudden he was kind of back in the box and taking swings. He was back. He was drawing Punisher. He was working on another book. Hell, he was doing covers. It was, and I don't know if it's like I know that he knew he was sick, and I don't know if that was part of it. Like if he just wanted to go out. I don't know, but I guess the saddest part is that I've known Steve for I knew Steve for a long time, and I knew him as a very unhappy person for quite a long time, and then that changed, and it in some ways, I guess it kind of made it harder, and that's why it made it really hard, at the end. It was going to happen. It's definitely sooner than anyone wanted it to, and it was just a matter of how long it could be kind of put off. And but yet when it happened, I actually a friend of mine, and a guy who I've worked with, he's a creative director at a video game studio in Stockholm. He texted me, and I was. He says, "Have you? What's going on? Why am I reading online that Steve Dillon has died?" And I'm like, "Oh God, no!" Like you're just never ready for it. Yeah. And I made a couple of calls and kind of got the confirmation. It was just like, just hurt really bad. The only thing that kind of lessened it is that I would tell Steve all the time how much I loved him. I genuinely did, and just because of a lot of the things that I've been through, and you just if you feel it, say it,
Cool.
And I would tell him that, and I would I would be able to. He would call me, and he would be calling me at like 8:00 at night. I'm like, Steve, what time is it where you are? Where are you? But we would just talk about stuff, and I enjoyed that. And he gave me a lot of advice, and I don't know, he's just a good friend to me. He was a hero, and then he's my collaborator collaborator, and he's my friend, and I respected him, and I loved him.
I hear you, man.
I just miss him terribly.
No, I understand, and I appreciate you opening up about it and everything, because it is fresh, and it's the worst. So, yeah. But
it's been a tough year.
Bad, man. I know. Jesus, I really.
Darwin was another friend, and Darwin at that one.
God.
I mean, I didn't know Darwin as well, but I had no idea that Darwin was sick. So
yeah, believe
me,
that was
a shock.
I understand, man. I had an interview with Ted Adams from IDW, and it was about a month or so before the news that he was going into hospice and everything, and certainly it was only a day or two after that he had passed. And I had said, I was such a fan of, all of his work, but in particular the Parker novels, the adaptations. And I'm like, gee, I hope that we'll be getting some more of that. And Ted very awkwardly is like, well, we love our work with Darwin. We hope that, that there is more coming. And it was just this very awkward thing, and they didn't think anything of it until, and I thought maybe there was a contract problem or what, but then you got the worst. You got the worst news, and I only met him a couple of times, but he was always very sweet to me, and it's
that was the thing with Darwin. If he decided, he liked you, and it was usually like, particularly if it was late in the night at the bar, and if he could get along with you then you guys were pretty much friends.
There you go.
Now, if he decided that you guys weren't going to get along, you probably were never going to get over that.
I know those stories as well. Yes, indeed. No, it's like you said, man. 2016 has just been it's just been a horrible year for a lot of people, and the survivors as well. I mean, it's. All right, well, there we go. So we're going to end on a downer, unfortunately. Oh, no, bring it back up. Hey, seriously, I'm really glad that Gun Theory is coming out.
Me too.
Horse, so congratulations on that.
Well, thanks. I hope people read it. I hope they enjoy it. I just hope that they appreciate the fact that if they, if someone reads the book and they're like, this isn't like that other thing that he wrote, and then just keep in mind that was the point.
Sure.
I was trying to do something different, and I'll find out in a few years whether I actually succeed. But in the meantime, I'll just be working on the next thing and then the next thing, and the goal isn't to get it right. It's just to
keep going,
just keep doing it.
Absolutely, no, there's no finish line, man. It's the journey. And I honestly, and I want to say it right. GeekCraftExpo.com. Check it out. That for future shows and some really neat artisans that are getting together in every town and showing their geek craft. That sounds awesome. And again, it's Comics Channel.
Comics Channel
with an X.
Comics with an X.
Yes.
COMIX channel.com.
And read the first 30-plus pages of Gun Theory there, and again, that's a good way to figure out if you want to make that purchase or not.
Dan Way, and man, I'll tell you, you should check out Gun Theory from Dark Horse Comics, and if you are on the trail of his Geek Expos, you should do that as well. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Word Balloon. Not the only episode you're going to hear today from Word Balloon. In fact, we're going to be doubling up on episodes as we head to Christmas because so many more people are on with time-sensitive books that deserve your attention, and I'm very excited to be talking to these creators. Among them, you're going to hear from Mark Andreyko talking about Love is Love, that very nice IDW DC anthology that supports the victims and their extended families from the Orlando shooting tragedy from this year. Really, Mark did something positive and got everybody together and has made an incredible anthology that really deserves your attention. So we talk about that on Word Balloon. Ryan Brown is back to give us more tips on creator books. We talk, of course, about God Hates Astronauts, but also his new book, Curse Words, with Charles Soule. And it's a great opportunity to talk to him about the new book. And again, compare what he's doing with Image with what he's doing when he self-publishes as well. So you'll learn more from Ryan Brown in that next episode of Word Balloon. Mark Andreyko and Ryan Brown coming up. Today's episode was brought to you by In Stock Trades at InStockTrades.com. You know, it's the closing days of the holiday. Two things to consider. One, great late-minute shopping at InStockTrades.com. But also, in that post-Christmas, oh, my God, I got gift cards or I got, money from relatives and I don't know how to blow them. Well, you know what I mean, the money. Do it at InStockTrades.com because they have tremendous books at great prices. And, man, it's a great way to fill in the collection with the books you're looking for at prices you can't beat. Your favorite writers and artists are waiting for you at great prices. InStockTrades.com. All right, thanks again for listening to Word Balloon. Keep your eyes peeled for another episode right down the barrel because they're going to come fast and furious this week as we head to Christmas and even beyond right up to the new year. So, man, my dance card is full. I'll tell you, my toes are killing me because I just waltzed with Daniel Way. I got Mark Andreyko and Ryan Brown coming up. Neil Holman from Archer, TV's Archer, The Art of Archer coffee table book is coming up, and we're going to talk about that and let you know that's available this week. Great details about the TV series and this excellent book. So also coming up later this week on Word Balloon, and a couple more things that I want to keep quiet until they happen. But I am happy to share that information with you, and looking forward to talking to you again later this week and through the end of this year. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2016.